It's a very good question. And I think that comes down to the kind of courses that people are going to embark on. I mean, Tony Blair simply saying we're going to put more young people through the higher education system, be that universities or colleges. I don't think that really tells us very much at all, because if you have, say, 50,000 more young people going into medicine and engineering, well, that's clearly very different from saying we're going to have 50,000 more people go into subjects like leisure studies and creative arts, where young people come out earning less. They're less likely to get a well-paid job, and so they're less likely to contribute more back to the economy in terms of tax and productivity. So I think Tony Blair setting a high-level target is a nice ambition, but unless we know what these young people are actually going to be doing, I think that leaves us with quite a lot of question marks.
And that's why I asked who was going to benefit this. Is it the lecturers, and they'll have a job and you can have more? Is it the buildings that you're going to keep afloat and keep heated? Or is it you're going to, in a way, disguise the youth unemployment figures? But actually, we don't need to do that because we've got 1.3 million vacancies in the job market. So really, when I speak to young people, what they're talking about, they want a faster path to earn, not a slower path to debt. So we're talking about choice and speed.
Yeah, indeed. And if you look at the latest data from the Office for National Statistics, 43% of recent university graduates are now working in non-graduate jobs. So we've got over 4 in 10 young people who do complete a full degree who are not going on to then go into jobs where they actually use that degree. So that's why the government is absolutely right in the last few years to talk about apprenticeships a lot more. They're right to talk about degree apprenticeships, where you can get a degree through an apprenticeship and end up with no student loan debt as well. And so when Tony Blair talks about 70% of young people going to higher education, if that means lots more people doing degree apprenticeships and getting great degrees and great jobs, I think I'd be very supportive of that. But if it just means more young people doing very expensive 3-year full-time degrees and they end up £50,000 in debt at the end of it, I'd be pretty sceptical about whether that's really going to help our economy very much.
I mean, Tom, what's the evidence for that this would increase productivity? Because I don't understand this. I mean, I studied history and politics at university, which most people might, with some justification, say is a completely worthless and pointless degree. I mean, I'm not entirely sure how having more people studying history and politics and being indoctrinated with Black Lives Matter is going to improve productivity in the economy. What's the evidence for it doing that?
Yeah, so the Tony Blair's report came out this week, and having looked through it, he does talk about the idea that people who get trained at higher levels, and of course, a university degree is one way, but not the only way you can do that. But if you go and study at higher levels, you can pick up extra skills, not just the extra knowledge. So your ability to do lots of project work, teamwork. There is some parts of university degrees in particular, and certainly apprenticeships, that do make you more employable. But again, you can't really generalize across different degrees. It's very hard to compare a degree in engineering to your history and politics degree to then say, well, which one's going to add more value? And how do we know before a young person chooses a university degree, which one's going to add more value to them as well? How do parents know which one's going to add more value? And so again, setting high level targets is one thing, but unless you can really dig down underneath that and say, well, what are the actual skills and knowledge that young people are going to learn? Then I think it is very difficult to say with any confidence that our economy is going to benefit in the long run.
You see, the thing that I would imagine is that all that will happen is that degrees will become completely worthless to employers and the people who have got them alike. Because if everybody's got one, in effect, nobody's got one, and employers will stop even looking to see whether you've got a degree or not, because everybody's got one, and we're going to end up with people who sort of the idea of starting at the bottom and working your way up is going to become an alien concept to people, because they're going to think, well, I've got a degree, I've got so much debt, I want to start at the top, not start at the bottom and work my way up through the ranks. So I just don't see how practically it's going to have the impact that Tony Blair thinks it's going to have.
Yeah, indeed. And some graduate employers have already decided to start, if not lowering their requirements about whether you need to have a degree, but some employers have already said, we're going to start recruiting people even without looking at whether they have a degree, because they're not convinced. More and more employers, I think, are unconvinced that just by looking at whether someone has a university degree, that it really tells you very much. And this is why I think we're seeing some very exciting things like degree apprenticeships appearing, because as these are designed by employers, they can be so much more confident that you get a degree, but you also get the kind of skills and knowledge that they need. And so to me, again, we've got to think about what students and parents are going to make of all of this. And if all the government does is encourage more and more people to do very expensive full-time degrees and not necessarily get a good job at the end of it, I don't really think that's the right goal for this government or indeed any other government. But if they start talking more about apprenticeships, and like you say, people working their way up through a company, do a part-time degree, do a degree at your local college, you still get the degree at the end of it. You still get those high-level skills that Tony Blair's talking about, but you don't need to bury yourself £50,000 in debt, which inevitably you won't be able to pay off in many cases, even over the course of your whole career.
Tom, I've just got a quick question here. I work with pupils on a weekly basis doing career guidance, and I'm always amazed that lots of pupils don't actually know what they're doing in school. They don't realise that's a passage to get into work, and really they need to be focusing on what they do want to do when they leave school, not stay in education for longer and longer and actually delay and procrastinate getting into the workplace. So how is this 70% going to university going to help people figure out what career they want?
Yeah, so some of the feedback we've got in our research at EDSK from young people is that all their schools and colleges want to talk to them about is going to university. The university is indeed going to be a good option for a lot of them, but not all of them. And if we just say, well, we're not going to worry about careers advice anymore, we're just going to push more and more people, young people, closer to degrees, if not straight into degrees, without those breaks that you're talking about, without taking a bit of time out to go and get a job and then think about a degree afterwards, simply creating a conveyor belt of young people from school or college straight into a 3-year, full-time, expensive residential degree. That's not the right way to think about it. And I think a lot of young people are increasingly looking at the amount of debt they end up with and saying, was that really the right choice for me? Didn't I have any other options? So you're right, we've got to improve careers advice as much as we have to improve our higher education system.
Tom Richmond, thank you very much indeed for joining us.